Yeah, this is the official uniform. So, this is the frock coat, and General Washington decided that this would be the official U.S. Army uniform and that the color of the uniform would be dark blue. And the Army's dress uniform today is still dark blue. Facings, which is this color, depended on either what your job was, red for artillery, or which colony you came from. Different groups of colonies wore different facing colors. Like the middle colonies, Maryland and the like, wore a buff color or a tan color. Now, you see all these buttons? Do they do anything? No, not a one of them. These buttons are 100% decoration. The way you actually button this coat closed is there are two little tiny hooks and eyes here, and you close those, and that's what closes your coat. So, these buttons on the cuff kind of do have a purpose because those were put on the cuff, one, to look good, but two, to keep soldiers from wiping their nose on their sleeve, which was a problem back then, you know, men. So, and the purpose of a uniform back then was two things: make you look fabulous on the battlefield and identify who you were. Had nothing to do with practicality back then. Take, for example, the pockets. They're fake.
You can't even put ammo in it.
Nope, didn't carry ammo in your pockets back then. They did things a little different. Now, this is a uniquely military garment. These were not worn by civilians. These are overalls. And the nice thing about overalls is they do away with the breeches and the stockings, and they also do away with the need to have leggings. And the purpose of leggings back then was to keep you from getting stuff in your shoes, because that was a problem. And leggings were commonly worn with these, but if you got overalls, don't need leggings, so very convenient. But they were just a military garment. Official hat of the Revolutionary War, the tricorn. This is another good example of strictly fashion, because you started out with a perfectly good, useful hat that would keep the sun out of your eyes and, you know, rain from pelting you and everything, and you turned it into a nice fashion statement that doesn't do anything for you. So, but that's just an example of uniforms and practicality back then. Now, about 98% of Americans back then were farmers, and this is the farmer's hat. It's called the round hat. And when they came into the Army, they would normally make one modification to the round hat, and that was pinning up the left side. Anybody know why? Just keep it out of the way of your musket when you're at shoulder arms, because if you've got this broad brim hanging out over your shoulder, every time you go to shoulder arms or do anything, you're going to be knocking your hat off. So they pinned up the left side, and that's why you see a lot of military hats that are pinned up on the left. So this is the actual most common uniform of the Revolutionary War, the hunting frock or shirt. You all know what fabric I'm wearing, by the way?
Linen.
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 Didn't have cotton. Why? Cotton gin hadn't been invented yet. So, whereas linen does not have sticky little seeds in it. So the hunting frock, you put it on here. And the reason this thing was so popular and came very close to being the official U.S. Army uniform was this thing is comfortable. Summer or winter, shoulder capes. They keep the cold off your shoulders and your back in the winter. They also keep the heat off your shoulders and your back in the summer. So it's an all-purpose or all-seasonal type garment. So the fringe was traditional, and this was a major American piece of clothing into the 1840s at least. So, and these were made at home, and most soldiers in the Continental Army wore this, not that, because the supply system to the Continental Army was really dicey. So different colonies took care of their soldiers in different ways. There weren't very many Continental units that were just U.S. units. Most of them were from Pacific states. Some of them were really well trained, really well equipped. Others not so much. So it just depended. Okay, and with this, you got to wear a belt, so that's one of the things. Your Continental Line soldiers wearing that uniform did not wear a belt, so they just wore everything strapped over their shoulders. So you just put this on like this and get all belted up, and I got a nice knife on the belt, and the handle, of course, is deer antler, which is very handy because fits your hand perfectly. And a nice hard material. So, all right, switching over to equipment. Y'all like my Merce? No. The Army calls these haversacks, and they've been around for a long time. They're what soldiers use to carry their daily necessities in. What is your most important necessity?
Food.
What? Food. Absolutely, food. And here it is. Army bread. Common name, you know it, is hardtack. Why is it called hardtack?
It's hard as a rock.
Wow.
Yep, you can knock on doors with it. So, hardtack is simple. It is flour and water mixed and baked. That's it. Now, why is it so popular and used by the Army as the main part of the Army diet from the Revolutionary War through World War I? It's something the Army likes. It's easy and it's cheap. And it lasts forever. I've handled hardtack that was 150 years old. Still perfectly edible. So, doesn't taste particularly good. If any of you have had Army ration crackers, very, very similar. So, if you want to make your hardtack more tasty, you put a bit of salt in it. So, and this is hardtack, so pass it around. You're welcome to lick it if you want.
That would have been expensive.
All right, next most important item in your haversack is flint and steel, and my flint's really worn out so here. But this is how you made a fire back then. Matches don't get invented for another 60 years. And then a tinder box. This is where you keep your tinder, your fire starting material. You need some sort of waterproofed container so you don't get your tinder wet, because you're not going to have a fire if you've got wet tinder. Mine's got a bonus feature. It's got a burning lens or magnifying glass on the lid. You all know what this is, and you can tell from the state of my clothing here, I'm in need of one. Now, you'll call this a sewing kit. The Army does not call these sewing kits. This is a housewife. That's the name of these things, has been forever. So, because who does your sewing repairs? Your housewife does. She travels around in your haversack with you. Now, we don't have plastic back then, so everything that's made out of plastic today, back then had to be made out of natural materials. And these are your three most popular natural materials. One, wood. That's a trencher or kind of bowl combination plate. And then these two materials, which are harder and denser for other type purposes. Toothbrush is made of bone and hog bristle. And then the spoon is made of horn, because you can heat horn up and shape it into anything you want to shape it into. What do I need a comb for?
Well, your hair's not, you're not going to have a haircut.
Yeah. Colonial men's hair was shoulder length, usually carried in a ponytail to keep it out of your way. But that was the fashion. It was also the fashion to be clean shaven. Most of your men in civilized areas, towns, villages, and that were clean shaven. No beards, no mustaches back then. If you were out on the frontier, you might be sporting a beard. But the main purpose of the comb is to keep your lice and fleas at bay. So, always been a plague for soldiers from a long time ago. Got a clay pipe for smoking. Got dice for playing games. And then we've got some nice little special items here. Y'all recognize this is a compass. It's also a sundial. So you can not only tell which direction you're going, but what time it is. Continental money. Got hard currency, copper, silver, and gold coins, or you got paper money. Everybody wanted hard coins. Nobody wanted this stuff. There was an expression back then, worthless as a continental. That was referring to the continental dollar. Nobody liked them or trusted them. They were easily counterfeited. They're only printed on one side. So if you got a printing press, you can make yourself rich until they catch you. Penalty for counterfeiting back then was death. Of course, death was the punishment for most crimes back then. So this is a bill from Georgia. Can you spend it in South Carolina?
No.
Probably not. Can you spend it in Georgia? Yeah, probably not. So, yeah, was not widely accepted. Hard currency was the stuff everybody wanted. There's your week's pay.
Oh boy.
All right. Here's a genuine Civil War, well, or not Civil War. This is actually French and Indian War. This is a grape shot from Fort William Henry. You've all felt buckskin, I imagine, being Texans. Well, here you can feel it again.
But now what would that come out of?
That came out of a cannon with a whole bunch of its friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like buckshot.
Yes, exactly like buckshot, but only on a giant scale.
Whoa, that would hurt.
Yes, it would. All right. Other things that you carry on yourself is your baldric, which has a short sword in it for infantry called the hanger. It's called a hanger because it hangs by your side, and you wanted it to be short enough it wouldn't get tangled up between your legs when you were running around on foot. Cartridge box is your ammunition box, and that has a wooden block in it fitted with holes, and that's where you carry your ammo. Here's what ammo looks like. This is the cartridge. It was paper wrapped. You got the ball or the bullet at the bottom here. All bullets were balls until the 1840s when we get the first bullet-shaped bullet. Yeah. And then the top here is your gunpowder. This is the original gunpowder, not what we use today. This gets replaced by smokeless powder way back in about the 1880s. Black powder has two undesirable characteristics. It's very smoky and it's also very dirty. So it clogs up your firearms barrel pretty quickly. American canteen. They were made of wood for the most part. This is about 24 different pieces of wood, so it's put together like a miniature barrel. Now, you got 24 pieces of wood, gonna hold water real good? Yeah, probably not. Life expectancy of a Revolutionary War wooden canteen was 6 to 8 months. So,
Wow.
and this is a reproduction one, so it's twice the normal size. I've got an original one up in the Revolutionary War area, half this size. So they were normally quite small canteens, which does not help you out a whole lot on a hot day. All right, riflemen carry different kinds of gear. They'd carry a hunting type pouch with their ammo in it and a powder horn. And powder horns are simply where you take a cattle, or in this case, buffalo horn, and turn it into a nice waterproof powder carrier. So, very handy item. Horn you can do a lot of things with. I showed you the spoon. You can take horn, cap it off, and have a horn cup. You can take your horn, you can heat it up and take it from being a round horn to being a flat horn. Purpose here is fits better in your pocket. That's a priming horn for carrying very fine gunpowder in. And then here's a very different use of a horn, a whistle. Very handy material. Common American tool / weapon of the Revolutionary War, the belt axe, hatchet, or tomahawk. Called a belt axe because where do you carry it? Stuffed down the back of your belt like that. That's where they kept those. So, but you can use it for chopping wood or chopping British. You have your choice. All right. Edged weapons. So, swords were carried primarily by your horse soldiers, and horse soldiers back in the Revolutionary War were called dragoons. Technical definition of a dragoon is a soldier that is mounted who can fight either on horseback or on foot. And they were the most well-armed soldiers of the Revolutionary War. Their principal weapon was a sword of some type. They also carried a brace of pistols or 2 pistols and a short musket called a carbine. This sword is a broadsword. It's a descendant of the knight sword, straight blade, double edge. So, and this is a real artifact here. This one was made around the year 1700. So it was getting old by the time of the Revolutionary War. It's called a Walloon hilt, after the area in the Low Countries where it was made. Second type of sword carried by your horse soldiers is called the saber. And the saber is a different kind of weapon. It is curved, and this is primarily intended as a slashing type of weapon. They also have a perfectly functional point on it that they can use too. So this one is a little post-Revolutionary War. This is Napoleonic War, so this was made around the year 1800, German made. Steel scabbards come in around the 1790s. Before that, they're all wood and leather, so they didn't survive. And then this is the typical sword of an officer, called a small sword, because compared to the others, it's small. They always have a more decorative hilt, and these could be used for fighting, but they were mainly used by officers to go that way, things like that. So.
And they were pretty.
Yep.
Makes the office.
All right. Now to switch over to bullet launchers.
So
Let me see what time it is.
well, when you have all of this stuff on, all this gear,
Yes.
about how much does it weigh? Do you know?
All this stuff?
Yeah, all the stuff that you would. Yeah.
10, 15 pounds.
Nothing like the rucksack.
But
that
you don't have a pack or anything like that, so.
It's cumbersome.
They only had one set of clothing, and they wore them until they fell off. So there's a lot of accounts of Continental soldiers barefoot in the winter fighting because they're and Continental soldiers that were wearing nothing but a blanket with a belt around it, and that's all they had left. So yeah, it was not a fun army to be in. Okay, firearms. This is the main firearm of the Revolutionary War. It is the British Brown Bess musket. This was adopted in the early 1700s, serves the British Army for 150 years in 3 different models. So, second model here was the principal model of the Revolutionary War. It differs from the first model in it's about 5 inches shorter. That's it. So, it's 75 caliber smoothbore musket. And smoothbore means not rifle, so not terribly accurate. You can expect to hit a man-sized target reliably at about 50 yards, and that's it. So, does that matter? No. That surprises a lot of people, but no, it really doesn't matter because we don't fight as individual soldiers back then. You fight as a unit. You are standing shoulder to shoulder with the soldier next to you. So I may be shooting at Tom, but I'll hit John instead. Does that matter? No.
They're both dead.
Somebody was probably shooting at John and hit Tom, so it all works out, you know? You may aim for a guy's head to hit him in the knee. Did that matter? No, that didn't matter either, you know? You knocked him out of the battle one way or the other. So you're not shooting individual bullets at the enemy, you're shooting an entire wall of them. So you're gonna hit something. So you can do 3 shots a minute with this if you're well trained. That ain't easy to do, I can tell you that. So.
Have you fired it?
Yes, we're going to fire it at the end. So, now no musket in the Revolutionary War or for the time after that was considered to be a complete serviceable army musket without the bayonet. This was your real killing weapon of the Revolutionary War. Never malfunctions, works no matter what the weather is and everything like that. So, really effective weapon. Now, the other firearm of the Revolutionary War is completely different. The long rifle, also known by the names Pennsylvania and Kentucky. This is a totally different type of firearm. Looks kind of similar, but very, very different. Now, comparison. That musket, I can do 3 shots a minute. Rifle, only 1. They're a lot harder and take a lot longer to load. Problem number 2, price tag, $100, $500. A lot harder to make, takes a skilled craftsman to make a rifle. Problem number 3, what am I missing here?
Bayonet.
Yeah, no bayonet. These were hunting weapons. You're not gonna stab a deer with a bayonet when you can shoot him from 200 yards away. So, a range difference, musket 50 yards, rifle 300. So, these are a lot more accurate. But, if you got rifle soldiers going toe-to-toe with musket-armed soldiers, the musket-armed soldiers are gonna take a lot of casualties, but they're gonna lose, or the musket-armed soldiers, they're gonna take a lot of casualties from the riflemen, but the riflemen are gonna lose because of the rate of fire and the lack of a bayonet. So you kept your riflemen off on the flanks, hiding in the trees and stuff like that. So, and then the pistol. Pistol is simply a short version of the musket. And pistols were primarily carried by the dragoons. This was the horseman's weapon because it's hard to wield a musket on horseback. But a pistol, you got it right in front of your saddle in its holster. You can pull it up and use it to shoot. Single shot, just like the musket is.
Pretty.
Yeah, right.
Pretty.
Now I bet you want to go see that musket go boom, don't you? Ooh, I finished early. So, questions? You want to all handle a musket, don't you? We can do that. Got low ceiling here. Just got to watch that.
The descendants of Elder John and his sons and all of that. The way that you're dressed, as Valerie was saying, as we all feel, this is who we are. And so thank you so much for being in character today to share this experience with us.
You're welcome. All right, so loading and firing the musket. Hold it in your left hand. Reach here, pull it to the half-cocked position. If you've heard that old expression, he went off half-cocked, this is what they're talking about, because if I pull the trigger in the half-cocked position, nothing happens. If it does, then you have a malfunctioning musket that's not going to work too good. Also, lock, stock, and barrel. Lock, stock, barrel. Flash in the pan. That means the pan ignites, but the main charge in the barrel does not ignite. So, all right, then you reach into your... I'm going to cheat a little bit here because the powder in my cartridges is very coarse grained, which means it does not take a spark well. So I got another little cartridge that's got much finer grained powder in it to put in my powder pan here. So there's what that looks like. Gunpowder goes into the pan there, and you notice the pan is right between the flint and the steel. So, then I close the metal piece here called the frizzen. That serves as a striker for the flint. And then, take the real cartridge out here. You rip the cartridge, open with your teeth, and then pour cartridge down the barrel, and you follow that with, I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of that. Woo! Load it in there too, so you get a nice big boom out of this. And you stuff all that stuff down the barrel. The bowl would stay wrapped up in the paper, and the purpose of that was keep it from running out of your barrel if you tilt your musket, because you don't want that to happen. These balls fit very loosely. So, all right, now I am loaded. Bring it up to this position. pull the cock all the way back. It's now at the full cock position. So when I pull the trigger, it's going to release this. It's going to slam forward. The flint is going to hit the frizzen, knock it out of the way, and as it does that, it's going to scrape the face of the frizzen, making sparks. They're going to fall in the pan. The pan will ignite with a whoosh. That flame will go through the tiny little hole into the barrel and ignite the main charge and shoot the ball out. There's no ball in here today. We're not shooting live ammo. So this is where you want to put your fingers in your ears if you do not like loud noises. Uh-oh, malfunction. And that was a common problem with that. And that's why you have your fingers to clean things up. Uh-oh. And that's also why you have this little tool. A flint is typically only good for about 20 rounds, and then you have to replace it or sharpen it. Ugh. Well, this is not good, folks.
Woo!
Oh.
Surprise you? Yeah.
Yeah.